Have you ever felt like you're just collecting English words and grammar rules, kind of like stamps in a book, but when it comes time to actually speak, you freeze? Well, today we're going to look at a completely different way to think about learning a language, all thanks to some incredible insights from Eliza Romy of the British Council. And it really all boils down to one simple, powerful idea.
And this, right here, this quote is the game changer. For so long, we've been taught to treat English like it's a subject you just memorize, just store it all away in your brain. But the real goal, the actual key to fluency, is to see it as a tool, something you actively and confidently use. So if we're going to start using the language more, we first have to get over the biggest hurdle for pretty much every learner out there, this crazy pressure to be perfect. And you know where that usually starts? With that classic nagging question. Yes, the great accent debate. So many learners spend so much time and energy worrying about which one is correct and if they'll ever sound like a native speaker. But what if that's completely the wrong question to be asking in the first place? This right here shows a huge shift in thinking. The thing is, there isn't just one perfect English. I mean, think about it. There's Indian English, Singaporean English, Australian English. The list just goes on and on. So instead of trying to perfectly mimic one specific accent, the real goal is actually much, much simpler. Just being understood. Exactly. It's about clarity over perfection. The goal is to focus on a consistent pronunciation that lets people understand what you're saying. It's not about sounding perfectly British or American. It's about sounding like you, just a version of you that other people can easily follow along with. Okay, so we've handled the accent thing, but now we've got to talk about the other big fear: making mistakes. So many of us grew up with parents or teachers who would pounce on every little error, thinking they were helping. But it turns out that can actually do a lot more harm than good. This analogy just explains it so perfectly. When you immediately tell a child, no, that's wrong, you shut them down. You make them afraid to even try again. But if you just gently model the right word, oh, that's daddy, you give them the correct information without crushing their confidence. And that exact same idea applies to learning English at any age. So once you change how you think about mistakes, it just naturally leads to rethinking the methods we use. It's not just about our mindset, but about the actual rules and techniques we've all been taught to follow for years. Come on, we've all been there, haven't we? Staring at these endless lists of random words, trying to just force them into our brains. It feels like you're being productive, but is it really the best way to get fluent? Well, the modern thinking, which is sometimes called the lexical approach, says probably not. See, instead of learning words one by one, it's way more effective to learn them in chunks. Think about it. You don't say, how are you, as 3 separate words. You say it as one unit. How are you? Learning phrases like that makes them so much faster to recall, and it makes your speaking sound way more natural. Okay, so what about grammar? I mean, grammar is absolutely important, but it's not the whole story. It's really just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. You can know every single grammar rule in the textbook, but if you can't actually use those rules to ask for directions or tell a funny story, then you're back to just storing the language, not using it. And that brings us right into the modern world, which is, of course, all about technology. We've got countless apps, AI tutors, all this stuff right at our fingertips. But can they really teach us everything we need to know? While those apps are fantastic for drilling vocabulary or practicing grammar, they have some pretty big limits. They can't teach you the social dance of a real conversation. How to take turns speaking, how to build on someone else's idea, or how to read the emotional cues in their voice. You might get really good at talking to an app, but that's a whole different skill from talking to a real person. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. This is the fundamental truth, isn't it? The whole reason language even exists is for us to connect with other people. So if our learning tools take the person out of the equation, we're kind of missing the entire point. So the bottom line is this: technology is an amazing tool, a powerful supplement, but it's not a replacement for real human interaction. The best approach is usually what's called blended learning, where you use these cool online tools to support the real, social, messy, and fun learning that makes a language actually come alive. All right, let's pull all these threads together. We've busted some myths about being perfect, we've rethought the old rulebook, and we've put technology in its proper place. So what does this new, modern philosophy of learning a language actually look like in practice? It looks like this. It's a big shift away from just collecting knowledge and a move towards actively communicating. It's about aiming for clarity instead of some impossible idea of perfection. It's about building your confidence instead of living in fear of correction. And it's about always, always remembering that language, at its very heart, is about people.
And so, this is the question to leave you with. Really think about it, because once you realize that the goal isn't just to know English, but to actually use it to connect, to share ideas, to understand others, well, that changes absolutely everything about how you learn.